Let's welcome Francois Nadeau, the CEO of Snipcart, with his talk on the state of modern e-commerce. Let's drop some emojis in the Discord chat for Francois. Francois, take it away.
Thanks for the introduction, Daniel. Hi, everyone. I'm François, CEO at Snipcart. Snipcart is a lightweight e-commerce solution for developers that you can add on top of any website, be it a trendy stack or a more traditional one. We've been doing this for almost 8 years now. So, needless to say, e-commerce has evolved a lot since then. And I'm very happy to be here and discuss this with you all today. The title of the talk is The State of Modern E-commerce. But what's the goal here? The goal really is to just help you make better decisions when choosing e-commerce solutions. And to do that, you need to better understand the modern e-commerce landscape. So how can we do that? By going through these 4 points. So first point, functionality. More specifically, the fragmentation of e-commerce functionality. We'll cover all of these different functionality blocks that we can find in different modern solutions. Second point, we're going to do a technical paradigm overview. And by paradigm here, it's just a fancy way of saying different approaches that you can have as a developer towards e-commerce. So for instance, what kind of building blocks you choose to use and how you assemble them. The three main ones that we'll cover here is monolithic, Jamstack, and headless commerce. The third point will be about categories. So there are a lot of new and old e-commerce categories, and it can be a bit messy to try to find your way through what is what does what. So we're going to try to nest some known e-commerce solutions into these different rough categories that I came up with. And last, we're going to delve into decision territory, where I will do my best to try to help you ask the right questions before picking an e-commerce stack. If it ends up being Snipcart, great. If not, no biggie. Let's begin. I like to think of modern e-commerce as a beautiful mess where there is a lot of fragmentation in functionality. Here's what I mean. When you look at different e-commerce solutions, you'll see that in one way or another, they're solving for these functionalities. So we have website design that's much more high level, that's much more visual. You have content management. Say, for instance, that you have a content marketing or SEO strategy that comes with your e-commerce site. You're going to need to create some articles, optimize them, that kind of stuff. Product management is about inventory, SKUs, the stocks, the product options, defining and managing all of the actual things that you are selling. Cart and checkout, here we are closer to the money. We're in a shopping cart experience online where you can add, remove products, change options, insert a discount, a promotion, something like that. And of course, go through a checkout where you can accept and process payments securely on your website. Last bit of functionality is store management. And what we mean by that is all of the operations behind the scenes that as a merchant you'll have to do. So managing orders, fulfilling them, contacting customers, defining shipping methods and rates, managing taxes, retrieving abandoned carts. There's a whole suite of things to do behind the scenes. If we were to position these functionalities on a general to specific axis, we'd get something like this, where website design is more general, not necessarily e-commerce specific, and store management is very much e-commerce specific. Now, let us just take a look at the different paradigms, the different approaches that I mentioned. We have three, remember? Monolithic, Jamstack, and headless. Okay, before you say anything, There are overlaps between Jamstack and Headless. I'll try to cover them in a bit. But you can see here that monolithic approach is a much more bigger one. So let's explain what we mean by this graph. Okay, the monolithic paradigm. If we were to give it a working definition, it could look something like this. Centralizing website and e-commerce concerns into one system. We'll explore solutions later, but for now, if you think about a traditional Shopify setup, it would fit the bill here in this approach. Now, if we wanted to look at the architecture of that approach, it's quite simple. As you can see, you have developers and editors that are working on an e-commerce CMS. And that part is very chunky, right? It takes a lot of real estate in that architecture graph. Why? Because it manages basically everything. All of the functionalities that we saw earlier are embedded into that monolithic platform. Okay, headless now as a paradigm. Working definition here could look like separating product and order management from any customer-facing front end. So what are we doing? We're focusing on decoupling data from presentation, and we do this by adding using an API layer in between both parts. Let's see. Here we go. So here there are more moving parts in our headless architecture. And that headless approach is driven by modern tooling becoming more and more popular and just available, but also by merchants who are becoming more sensitive to performance and what it means for their dollar bills, and maybe less warm to the idea of vendor lock-in. And maybe also they want to sell on different channels. They want to espouse that omni-channel approach where you can sell from one single place into different customer touch points, as we're seeing here, right? So in the graph, in the architecture graph, you still have developers and editors collaborating and having input into two different tools here. More often than not, you'll have an e-commerce backend. Think about Shopify headless, commerce layer, big commerce headless. These could fit the bill here. And then more often than not, it will be paired with a headless CMS like Strapi, Contentful, Sanity, Nadeau CMS, all of these players. Why? Because these headless CMSs are better at managing an actual marketing site. And the e-commerce backend is better at managing an actual store, an actual e-commerce operation. So paired together in a headless manner, they often go hand in hand. You have your API layer where the data that lives inside of the e-commerce backend and headless CMS will be translated into some kind of a JSON format, for instance, that can be then interpreted further down at the content consumption level, where you can push that information towards Internet of Things, touch points, a web application, a mobile application, and so on. So the headless approach is the trendiest these days for good reasons. It has benefits, right? Just in terms of developer experience, you get a lot of more customization and flexibility. You get also portable backends and data where the front ends can be swapped for newer or better technologies that you find along the way. Of course, the multi-platform shopping experience also is a big plus, especially for bigger e-commerce players that really want to do a omni-channel digital fancy experience where you can have the same user journey flow and purchase through different touch points and all that. And you can use the Jamstack tooling. So, moving on. The Jamstack approach now. The working definition will resemble the headless one with some details being different. So, let's say we define this by separating concerns, focusing on fast front ends and making e-commerce data more portable. So now the focus here really is on front end and performance, as is the Jamstack in general. You'll see an emphasis on using statically generated assets, which are a core component of the Jamstack philosophy. It really is a best tool for the jobs approach to e-commerce. So in that sense, there is no prescribed architecture here. I would say that modularity is king, and you as a developer mix and match the elements you need in there to create your Jamstack e-commerce. Okay, moving on, we have categories up next. So what have we seen thus far? We've seen the different functionalities that you can solve for in e-commerce. You've seen the approaches you can take to solve for them. And now you'll see the categories of e-commerce solutions that can help you do all of that. E-commerce categories. Okay, so let me first preface this by saying that we see monolith here again. And it's just that it's a paradigm, a monolithic approach, but it kind of becomes a category because some tools are built as monoliths to do a monolithic approach. And be it a traditional Shopify or something you could build yourself, right? Or a more traditional Magento thing, for instance. So monolith is one of the categories. Some of the well-known players, you have Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento, PrestaShop, Webflow, and many others. Add-on is another category that's quite popular and that has a longer track record, in which you can find solutions like WooCommerce, Gumroad, Shopify's Buy Button, Snipcart, Foxy. The storefront is a newer category in which you can find solutions like Shogun, Vue Storefront, Front Commerce, React Storefront, and last but not least, newer-ish category too is the API e-commerce API. You can find solutions in there like Commerce Layer, Nacelle, Commerce.js, Celliar, Swell, and many others. So let's see which kind of functionalities they solve for and some real-life examples. Okay, this is the disclaimer. The categories I just showed you, of course, there are overlaps between them, and I'm happy to address these in the chat or in the Q&A. And just to give you examples, Shopify and BigCommerce, monoliths at first can now be used headless, of course. WooCommerce, you could argue that it also handles your WordPress storefront. Commerce Layer, even though it's a backend e-commerce API, also comes paired with beautiful React components that you can use in the storefronts, and so on, right? The truth is, it's probably smart to position yourself as a purely storefront or as an API-first e-commerce platform or whatever. But the rest of the functionalities that we've seen, your customers will need to solve for them in one way or another. So what we're seeing is that many new and old solutions will blur the lines between these categories by offering a core X, but some possibilities to easily have Y or Z also. And you'll see, like, let's not name names or whatever, but many of them also come up with a straight up, stitched up monolith approach, where you can use it as monolith, but everything is already separated and you can take out the pieces you don't want. Now, which of these players will remain in a couple of years? I don't know. I'm not an expert. Is this smart product development? I also don't know. What I do know is that it's very exciting to see all of these different ways to solve the age-old now problem of selling online. And something that to keep in mind for everyone is that the e-commerce pie, it's getting bigger by the minute, especially with these uncertain times that we've been living through. So that huge disclaimer out of the way. Back to the monoliths now, the category of monoliths. What do they support in terms of functionality? Everything, right? So website design, cart and checkout management, content management, product management, store management, everything. Let's give an example. Here we have Alfred, a beautiful website that's just mostly built with Shopify, right? So you can go and check it out, but it would be an example of maybe of a monolith. And if they change their tech stack since I did my research or whatever, apologies. You can let me know in the chat. Okay, the add-ons category now. What functionality do they focus on? Well, more often than not, they will take care of product management, of cart and checkout, and store management. So the actual design of the website and the management of its content will be done by other tools. For instance, well, I'll give you the example. For instance, here you have a website that I love called Overview Effect. You should definitely check it out. The stack is an e-commerce add-on, which is Snipcart. The front end and the website like design is Gatsby. It's done in Gatsby. And the backend is the content management is in Nadeau CMS, a beautiful product. Now, storefronts. They will be the tools in this category will be focusing on website design and cart and checkout. That being said, they more often than not will come equipped with API connectors and a way for you to easily pull in data from e-commerce backends so you can display it in their beautiful UX optimized storefronts. A cool example here is Zenith Watches. It runs on Vue Storefront. Vue Storefront is the e-commerce storefront here. Prismic is the headless CMS, and the e-commerce backend here, last time I checked, was Magento 2. Okay, the last and broadest category is APIs, e-commerce APIs. More often than not, they will focus on product management and store management. The website design, content management, and cart and checkout part might be offloaded to different solutions, as some of the ones we've just seen. An example here, Allbirds, which is a very popular e-commerce site, runs on Shopify Headless. So the e-commerce backend is that e-commerce API is Shopify Headless. It's paired with Contentful as a headless CMS to manage the site content. And then in the front, it's mostly a React app. Of course, they're using a whole bunch of tools, but these are key pieces of their stack, last time I checked. Okay, so what have we seen thus far? We have seen that there are different functionalities in the e-commerce world, and that different approaches and categories of solutions will handle some of these for you, right? So that's all fair. That's all good, but it could remain confusing and a bit paralyzing because it's a lot of information. It's a lot of stuff, different solutions, and you can't read the documentation of all of these and play with all of these before making decisions. So you have to have like proxies and ways to evaluate your choices. And I hope what follows can help do that. Okay, first, there are some existing resources that let you either filter categories, solutions by categories with the functionality supported by these categories. This one right here is a resource that I made with a friend. It's available at headlesscommerce.netlify.app. You can go and check it out. It's also open source, so of course I am missing some solutions in there. You can do a pull request and all that stuff on GitHub. There's a link beneath in the footer. This also is a beautiful resource that has been made by the folks at commerce.js, if I'm not mistaken. It kind of lets you filter different categories of tools you can use in an e-commerce stack and lets you kind of pick and build your stack. It's neat, so it's available at headlesscommerce.org. You should check it out. With that said, we'll move on to the questions to ask yourself as a developer when you want to choose an e-commerce stack. Okay, there are 6 main questions to ask. The first one is about developer experience. It's fun, it's cool, it's nice to have fancy new tools that you love that that make your workflow faster and less error prone and whatever, right? But at the end of the day, this e-commerce project isn't about you, it's about the merchant, right? So you just want to make sure that you want to check yourself. You want to make sure that DX isn't weighing too heavily in your decision. So that's a good advice to keep in mind. Okay, the second question you want to ask yourself is about this famous omni-channel thing, multi-platform thing. So the question becomes, what touch points do I need to be selling on? If you have a physical component in your e-commerce project and the merchant needs to be selling in fancy events with interactivity and all of that, maybe consider using a purely headless approach where you will have one single source of truth that can be passed into different channels of transactions, right? But ask that question. And the reverse is also true. Do I really need to sell on all of these funky channels? If the answer is not, maybe don't go so hard on the headless thing or on that part of the pitch. Third question is about third parties. So you are a developer or a web designer, you have skills, you kind of know where you can add the most value. So you need to identify that. And then identify the places where your value add could be shaky, let's say. And these places you want to offload to existing third parties, be they SaaS, open source projects and libraries, whatever. And when you do that exercise, always try to keep in mind this heuristic of my time versus my client's dime, time versus dime, right? So what are the benefits, but what are the costs? This is something you have to think about when you choose an e-commerce stack. The 3 last questions are about site management. The first of the 3 last is about site management. So, okay, there will be people involved in an e-commerce project, right? Marketers, e-commerce managers, maybe social media specialists, ad expert, beautiful people. You want to make sure that the e-commerce stack you're bundling together or just picking lets them do their work the best they can. You don't want them to be always reliant on you to do trivial or basic stuff that needs to be done. So think about these people too involved in the project. SEO is more often than not an important factor in e-commerce. You want that sweet organic traffic coming from Google. So you have to make sure the e-commerce stack you're picking lets you and or marketers easily optimize and define these meta tags, and that the front end it loads quickly and is secure and it's pre-rendered, if easily crawlable, let's just say, all of that. So SEO is a big one. And then the last one that I really like, and I called ops scalability, is about you passing the ball. Ask that question. Will there be other developers working on this? When? Other agencies? Are they as fluent in the languages and frameworks I chose as me? Is the technology I picked well documented? Does it have a strong community? Does it have an empirical track record of e-commerce success? So this is very important because you don't want to be the single point of failure of an e-commerce project. And last but not least, when you have to pick an e-commerce stack, do your research. Developers love to read the manual to get their hands dirty, so do it, right? Of course, your mileage may vary here, but there are different ways where you can get information and get these proxies that will help you make a decision. So communities is one, join Slacks and Discords and whatnot. There are forums or subreddits, for instance, where you can go ask for guidance, where passionate people dwell and reply in comments and whatnot. You can ask the teams directly too. For instance, if you write to Snipcart about hesitation you have, we'll be happy to chat with you. And most of the SaaS and tools out there, the teams behind these are passionate people, and they love to chat with you. You have tutorials, like hundreds, if not thousands of tutorials out there. Just Google for them or go on YouTube or Twitch. There are lots of educational content you can consume. Look for social proof. So in your network, are there people that you know and respect that are using that technology? Or have you seen e-commerce projects that you like and respect and are inspired by that have used that technology, right? Look for these cues of social proof. And then starters, if you want to go more hands-on, most of the e-commerce solutions that I mentioned in this talk, they all have some easy way to get started, right? Where you can build a demo site or a working e-commerce site just with a CLI or deployed to Netlify or Vercel or whatever. So just do it and then see how the DX feels, see what the end result of content management would feel for a marketer. These are ways to do research. Now we're moving into the shameless plug territory. Okay, so let's say you think the add-on category sounds very interesting for your project. If so, here's my shameless plug. Maybe you should use Snipcart. Snipcart is injected into your site via JavaScript, and the products are created as HTML elements on which you add some markup. And we do indulge security. You can change prices in DevTools. We do a crawlback for that. Happy to answer more in the chat. But if you consider Snipcart, just consider this, when to use Snipcart. So our users, they're mostly freelancers, agencies, and in-house developers working with small and medium businesses. They use it to sell quickly or to build custom experience. That's kind of our spectrum of usage of Snipcart. I'm humble enough to say that sometimes maybe you shouldn't use Snipcart. So if you have a lot of enterprise requirements, if you want to build marketplaces, if you want to sell on a lot of different touch points, maybe it's not the best fit right now. However, if you want to do authentic web and mobile stores that don't look like templates, if you want to really own and choose the stack you work with and then just add e-commerce on top, if you want to keep an existing website, if you're working with SMBs, those are all great reasons to use Snipcart. Let me end on a weird note, which is clients and merchants, they don't care about your stack, right? So we've been talking about stack a lot in this talk, and that's just fine. But at the end of the day, if you're not using Shopify or WooCommerce, for instance, you're going to be going against a lot of brand recognition and a lot of top of mindedness in the heads of merchants when it comes to these pillars of our community, of our e-commerce community. And that's fine. It's just that if you're convinced that the stack you want to use is different from that, turn the technical features that you love into tangible benefits. Speak the merchant language, right? That will help get your stack accepted. And yeah, maybe clients don't care about your stack, but I do care about your stack a lot. I've been doing this for 8 years now. I love learning about it. I love trading notes. So you should definitely reach out to me. I can recommend whatever. We're independent and profitable at Snipcart, so I don't have to pitch my own thing all the time. Yeah, so please do reach out. I love to chat about that stuff. I'm at François at snipcart.com. I'm at THE_FLN, D_FLN on Twitter. And you can also hit me up on LinkedIn if you want to be more corporate. That is it for me, folks. It's been a blast to share all of these ideas with you. I look forward to seeing all of the great content that comes from the Strapi community and Strapi conference. Thanks for having me.
That was such a good talk, Francois. E-commerce is definitely something I think we should all buy into. Wait, I've got something for this. Yeah, it sucks that I can't make crappy jokes for you all in person, so I have to use a laugh track. But anyway, I really loved your talk, Francois. I'm really getting into the talks now, and I hope you're all having fun. Oh my gosh, what is that? I'm so sorry. At least you know it's live. But yeah, this is just a reminder to ask all your questions in the Discord. And in case you missed anything, we're on the Integrate track, and I'm your digital assistant, Daniel.